Alrighty, hello there. So we are now in the second week of doing recording, because last week I did two basically episodes at the same time. So this week we're talking about this is the first actual week of working on the project. And so last week I said that I was going to work on this user story, which is basically the foundation of this project, which is being able to create and stop sessions with a single click. So that you can actually track the time. So, because think of it, to fill in on the last two episodes, I'm working on building a Pomodoro, basically productivity / break timer, so you can track how much time you're on task versus off task, or focus mindset versus diffuse mindset. And so we went through some different features that I wanted to add to it, comparing it to some of the other apps out there and why I wanted this feature specifically. So this is one of the foundation things. Everything else is built off of this idea of a session and log. So sessions are from start to end of working, and then inside of that session is going to be logs that are like productive break. So the idea here is that this week I was going to start with actually creating sessions. So started with, what I should have done beforehand is said, and I've started to think about this now, is what does it mean to finish the feature? Like, what does it look like when it's done? How do I know that I've actually finished this? Because right now I'm kind of in this vague area where I've spent some time on it and it works, and I'll show you it working, but I don't know if it's like done yet. I won't have to revisit this. So sessions are going to have a date associated with them, because they're going to be the larger things. I'm thinking that this is going to be like a work, think of it like a shift at working. So they're associated with a single date. I don't know how difficult it will be to have dates that go from 11:30 p.m. to 1 a.m. I don't know. I'm assuming it won't be too difficult. And it might already be able to do that. I'm just not sure yet. Have not tested that out. Whether or not the session is active, because that will basically help me when someone opens up the page, whether or not they were working on a session. So say if you started something on your desktop, and then I open up the same thing on my phone, I should see that there's an active session right now, and it should show me that it's in progress. So that's going to be that active. Only one session should ever be active at a time. And I can show you that's kind of working-ish right now, but not really completely. Start time when you press the button, end time when you press the button again, and then the user it's associated with it, and then eventually the logs that will go inside of the session. So simple idea of what the database will look like is going to be users can have 0 or more sessions. So it can be basically one to many. And so these are going to be referenced out because I want to be able to view the sessions in multiple different ways. So I want to be able to change the way that I can access sessions. I don't want to embed them to users. Additionally, sessions, there has to be at least one log associated with a session, but there can be more than one log associated with a single session, but there won't be logs associated with multiple sessions, if that makes sense. So that's what this little thing indicates over here. So I'm going to just embed the logs into the sessions. They're going to have their own data model and schema, but they're going to be inside of sessions, because there shouldn't be, in my mind, the way that you would use this, I've had use cases where I've used the prototype and I've gotten up to 20 or 30 logs, but it never really gets past that unless you're doing a really long session. Additionally, sessions, I could see one or multiple in a day. So at the end of say a year, you might have upwards of 300 to 500 with one user. So that's why I'm thinking reference instead of embedding that in the user document, because that's just a lot of information to put into a single user. Because I'm thinking this is how I'm going to use it in the future. So flowchart, how I'm thinking this is working. These are simple sketches. I didn't really do a lot of in-depth with this. I really just wanted to get the process down and start working through it and practicing it, more so than actually getting good, useful flowcharts. So press the start session button. It creates a session in the database, and that changes the stopwatch timer. It starts the stopwatch. And then when you open it up, when it loads up, it should check for past sessions, look for the active session, and if there is one, it should continue the previous session. If not, it's going to say you can start a new one. So very simply here, I did not work a lot on the UI yet. I literally only made the button this week. I have not determined where the button's going to go or what it's going to look like. It is just a button. So eventually, when everything else gets fit around, I'll work on each of these features independently, and then I'll figure out how I'm going to lay them out, how I'm going to design them. So haven't even worked on the timer. That might be next week's project. I'm not exactly sure yet. But it's really just a button that it's going to say new session. You press it, creates a thing, starts a timer, and then you press it again to stop it. So these are some more sketches of kind of what the overall thing might look. This is more of the data model, how I came up with some of the ideas. This is what it currently looks like, is something like this, where it's a timer, start session, stop session. Different ideas of how it might look in the future, maybe doing something instead of like visual graph, doing just a timer where you just have like you can see the time here, press new session, or maybe do something like the bar, like the goal bar, where you have the timer on the right hand side. Also thinking this potentially like having a graph where you can see the time go up and down. These are really just different views. This idea kind of intrigues me a little bit, honestly, of having maybe this be a mobile view of it, is having something circular, because I have a few different apps where they use like, basically it's a pie chart with that progress. That seems interesting to me, being able to pause and play it from there. Because I started thinking about this. I was like, okay, part of the reason why I like this project so much, and part of the reason where the value comes from being able to visually measure the difference from your expected or your goal to your current progress, right? And so being able to make sure that you can see that difference and visualize, like, I don't need to know that this is like 1 minute and 30 seconds out of 5 minutes. I can see how far along it is. That gives me an idea of like, okay, I'm still like, I don't know, what is that? That's almost like a third. I'm a third of the way through the time, right? I don't need to know, okay, I'm exactly 32.1% through. I can just visually look at it. And that's the idea, is I'm glancing at this. I don't want it to be like I have to decode the information. I should be able to visually understand it by looking at it. So that's ideas for the future. So I can actually, let me show you what this looks like. So I'll get the code up here. It's currently running. And so let me walk you through. Let me show you it working first. Yeah. So as you see here, it is literally just a button. So I can Control F so you can see there. This is literally the button that it's currently, I'm not finished with the button yet. I don't like where it's at. But I can show you if I press the button. Oh, look, it shows me full screen. Yeah. So if I press the button right now, you'll see a message, session created successfully. I will quickly end the session and I will open up the database. There you go. Okay, so the database right here. So you can see there's nothing in the database. I just started and stopped it. So we're going to refresh here. And booyah, you can see I'm going to delete this so you can see that we're starting off with an empty one. And then we'll go back to our thing here. We'll start. This will create it. We're currently at 7:54 p.m. So I'm going to give it just a few seconds just to let it go. And you can see now it's on end session. So this is how I'm thinking. It's going to be one click to start. And it's almost been a full minute. So I'm going to just let it go for a little bit longer. And then when you press this button and it gives us this message, I don't know whether or not I like the feedback on that message, because I feel like this should only be used for like big things. But I guess if the session should be like multiple hours apart from one another. So I think it does make sense to have that type of feedback. So let's look at our database again. You can see nothing here. Start, we're at 7:54 is when we started it. So start time. There's today's date. And it is in UT, I'm going to say it's UTC time. So 1:54:13, and you can see the end time here is at, we basically waited 20 seconds. And then you can see that's the user ID of who I'm logged in as right now, and this is the ID for the session specifically. So you can see that there. So that was just created, and we can do it again if you really want to see. So let me show you what happens when you press start. So this is just pressing start. We should actually see it already in the database. So let's refresh here. And boom, so you can see right here, This one, the end time is null. The button hasn't been pressed again yet. And you can see that active is set to true. So this past one, when I press the end, it set the active to false. This one you can see active is set to true. So I don't have anything validating that only one of them is true yet. That needs to be done still. So I think I'll do that when I load the past sessions. So there you go. Yeah, it's updating the database, and that's pretty much that was kind of what I wanted to. So I'll end the session, and just to verify, we'll look at the database again and refresh there. Now both of them should be false, 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 and you can see that end time right there. So yeah, there you go. That is basically the feature working. Maybe not as much as everyone would like, but it's still working. And you can see this is all the logs right here. You can even see when we end it, we have the ID for the session to be able to end it and set it to false. So this is creating a session, posting it, and then updating that single session right here. So you can see that there. Okay, so we started off with the model. This is kind of going back to our sketches of what things are gonna look like. So you got the user, that's a reference to the user, whether or not it's active, the date, then the start time. I almost don't know if you need date, because we can kind of take date from the start time if we really wanted to. I don't feel like there's a reason we should do that, honestly. I feel like that's just dangerous practice, because start time may be null or something like that. So we'll keep it the way it is right now. I was playing with the idea of when we add Pomodoro logs. So yeah, this is the model. So then this is the thing that kind of manages the model. So when we create a session, let's see here, getting all the sessions. Let's go to, here we go, creating a session. So you can see all we do is really just take information from the body of the thing. Basically when they post requests, we basically take the information in there, and I can show that in a second. So this is when you hit, so this is still in progress, is getting the active session, but when we post right here, it goes to our create Pomodoro session, and we'll go over here. So basically this is the code for the actual bar, the actual button is here. So, and this is still kind of a work in progress. So all this stuff won't activate unless the Pomodoro timer, like unless this class is on the page, which means we shouldn't be doing this stuff. And mostly that's there kind of because I know there's going to be a few other apps and I don't want them interfering with one another. So I also started messing with, I realized about halfway through, two things. I realized two things when I was working through this. I kind of knew what I was doing, but not as much as I thought I did. I knew how to do everything with spaghetti code. Like I could make it work, but it wouldn't be organized nicely, and it wouldn't work good. Second thing I noticed is that there's still a lot that I have to learn about this stuff, and a lot that I haven't thought about with executing it. So even though I was really only able to get like 9/10 of one feature done this past week, I'm still working on a lot of the build up for that, like building up the project and the process and the mindset, walking through all the steps in order to, like, once I get this stuff down, then it should be easier. So I created, I basically had everything in a single file. This is like the old file. So everything was just in a single file. And so what I did is I broke it up. So this is going to be the actual, you can see it much shorter. And then we're going to have all of our sessions and stuff are going to come from a utility package. So this is creating a new session, and you can see this is the post from when we create it, setting it to active, setting the date on it, and setting the start time. And then we return the current session ID so that we can edit and update and whatnot on it. So this is all in its own fancy little thing. So all these guys are all separate from this, which means that all I have to do to create a new session is call it right here and await the result of it. So that's pretty cool. And this is changing the session to the label and changing the color of it and changing the label and changing the color of it. And this is setting the active session to false as well. So ending the session, I can show you that. We take the ID of our current session, and that's all of this right here. This is the ID of our current session. And then we're setting active to false. And then we're setting the end time, which if we look back here, the end time is literally just set to whatever time is right now when you press that button. So yeah, that's it for the first feature. it's a start. It's not the greatest, but it's there. It's there. I think I'm having a little bit of trouble figuring out what the next step is, because I think, like, if we were to go, like, let's look back here. So if we're looking back at our user stories, this is the one where I was like, okay, we're going to work on this one down here. The other thing, so that one's not finished yet. I wouldn't consider it done because active session isn't being set and unset properly. It's not being validated. There's also a few different like loopholes that you could get around working with it. I also want to spend a lot of time on the actual organization of the code and making sure that when I'm working in the future in this project, everything is organized properly. Like working with modules, working with separating out files, getting the bundling working properly. So I want to spend some time on that this week. I think that's important to the longevity of the project and making sure that everything else runs smoothly. The other thing is I don't fully understand asynchronous code. I need to understand sending and receiving API calls a little bit better than I currently do. So that type of stuff I want to learn this next week. But let's see here. Editing sessions could be interesting. So that could be worked on. Tracking productive/break times. This is working with Pomodoro logs. So that could be interesting. Timer. I think timer actually, after I finish Pomodoro sessions, I think the timer is going to be the next easiest thing to work with. Timer is going to need a start button, a stop button, and a reset. Maybe. I don't know if we'll stop because will we stop the timer? Will there be a reason to stop the timer? Because, I mean, I can think of reasons why I'd want to stop the timer, but from technical speaking, if we stop the timer, as a user, I would expect us to stop tracking time. Or maybe we don't stop tracking time. But that's, I feel like we create an instance of we're no longer like tracking whether or not it's like productive time or a timer for productive things. Because that's where I think what we'll do is we'll be like, okay, so we're thinking about this in terms of having two modes, basically. Productive time, which is our orange mode, and break time, which is our other thing. So let's open up this guy. So the way I'm thinking that this will work, this is the prototype. So we're right now in productive mode, right? I don't think, like right now we can stop the timer, but we also stop tracking. I don't want to do that because that means we have to figure out and track the absent time, and we have to like it creates more data than I want to be messing with, honestly. I just want there to be one start time and one end time. So instead of having be able to pause a timer, I think it should just switch to break. So with timers, and this is where it comes with timers, is, for instance, right now, the timer is set to 1 minute. You can see that here. It doesn't show anything in here on the timer. But let's set it to 0.5. So you can see now it's set to 0.5 minutes. So what happens now is that the timer, I think there's a noise associated with it. Yeah, there's a noise associated with it. You might not have heard of it, but it was loud. So you can see the timer is still ticking right now. It's still going. It's still we're at 40 seconds right now. And you can see like it's negative time. So the timer went off. It let me know as a user that I've reached that time limit, but it's not stopping the tracking sense of it. Because that's how I think it works, right? Because it's like, for example, if I'm working on a project productively and I'm in the zone right now, I don't need to take a break. I don't want to take a break. Like that's the option I have as a user, is to say like, okay, I told myself I was only going to work for 15 minutes, but I'm in the zone right now, so I'm going to keep working past this break time because I feel like it, because I can't do it. So I hit the end of this. It's going to make that noise again. So we hit our timer, which is going to be 30 seconds. It's a really loud noise. So we hit our timer. It's 30 seconds. The tracking is not stopping. So the way that this is going to work with sessions and logs is that your log will end when you press this button. When you press the break button, and it will automatically just continue on to the next thing. And you'll be able to stop it. So timers will be different, right? Because I can change. So it'll be interesting is I don't know how smart I was when I created this. So we're going to find out. We're going to find out how smart I was when I created the prototype. So, oh, that's interesting. That's even broken too. That's funny. Okay. It's going to be a loud noise. Ugh. Okay. Now, can I reset the timer again to 1 minute? I can, but notice the noise probably won't go off because I didn't think of this case where someone would set the time to something small and then hit the timer and then move the timer again. So whenever time you change this, I think is going to be just resetting it. Like, I mean, you can, when I press reset, it won't reset the timer. It will reset the bar. So it didn't make a noise this time and the color of the bar didn't change. So we didn't hit a second timer. I want to hit a second timer like that. So that's how I'm thinking timers will work. So timers, I think, is next week's project. Not 100% sure because I want to make sure that I actually finish this guy. Because I don't think it's in a done state yet. And I haven't figured out yet what done means to me. So I'm going to spend some more time thinking about that because one, I'm not able to load past sessions. Maybe that's its own feature. So actually before I work on timers, I'll work on making sure that the active and passive or active and unactive part of the session works properly. So to make sure that that's validated and make sure that I can load a past session. And then I'll work on timers the week after that, or this week, depending on how much time I have. So that's basically progress right now. We got things working in the database. I was really excited when that was working, when database stuff was working. So yeah, that is this week's progress. I have spent just a tiny bit more time. Let's see, ideas. There we go. So I spent a little bit more time on this document. Recreating user stories, so they did look a little bit better. Let me scoop in a little bit. And then I added a section for working agreement and figuring out okay, when you work on something, it's just kind of what's your process for working, making sure you communicate that. This is more of an internal document for me. But when you're working with other people, this is important. But for me, the way that I'm thinking of using this is saying okay, when I commit something up, how am I gonna, what steps am I gonna take to make sure that I creating checklists for myself, making sure that when I do things that I'm checking myself and all that stuff. And then also, this is what I was talking about, having a definition for what's done. Because I have not reviewed the code yet. I have not tried refactoring it or documenting it. I don't have any test right now. And I don't even know if it works on the mobile version. So there's a lot of things that have not been tested yet. And then this is creating more of a detailed, this is what I was talking about when I was saying creating completion criteria for this. I have not done that yet. So that is doing that. This is an example I created. This is some pictures. So this is what I want user stories. When I decide that I'm going to work on a user story, I want to be able to fill this out and say okay, here's what it needs to be a completed feature. And then having also more space for drawing data model, flowchart, and wireframe sketches. So that's what I've been working on in addition to this, getting the process all there and together. I think that, okay, that stopped. So it's working, it's steadily. I'm trying to think of what I was going to show you guys in addition to that. I think that's pretty much it for this week. I know we're already at 24 minutes. So yeah, so we got things going in the database now, and we've still got a bit more work to do to get it a little bit polished. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll update you next week.